When my daughter-in-law told me to leave, I smiled instead of crying. It wasn't that I didn't feel it. The pain was there, deep in my chest, like a cold stone that wouldn't melt, but somehow I couldn't bring myself to be angry. All I could think about in that moment was how much I had given up for my family. I spent years putting everyone else first. My children, my husband, even my own dreams. It was always about them, always about their happiness. I thought I was doing what a mother should do, what a wife should do. I thought it would make them love me more, appreciate me more. I thought the sacrifices would matter. But when she said those words, when my daughter-in-law looked at me with cold eyes and said, "It's time for you to leave," something inside me shifted. It was like everything I had done, all those years of silent sacrifices, were suddenly erased. It wasn't the first time I had been made to feel like I didn't belong. Over the years, I had felt it in small ways, but this time, it was different. It felt like the world was telling me I was no longer needed, and I realized, for the first time in a long while, maybe it wasn't about what I had given. Maybe it was about what I hadn't received. I remember when I first became a mother. It was a joy I had always dreamed of. Even before I had children of my own, my husband and I, we were young, barely out of our teens when we had our first child. Life was tough, but we managed. I spent every waking moment caring for my baby, learning everything I could about being a good mother. Then came the second child, and soon after, a third. By the time my youngest was born, I felt like I had lived a lifetime of sleepless nights, feeding schedules, school runs, and endless chores. It was exhausting, yes, but it was also what I had signed up for, or so I thought. Through all of this, I never asked for help. I didn't want to. I thought it would make me weak to admit I was struggling. After all, my mother had never asked for help, and she had raised her children just fine. I wanted to be strong like her, but my strength came at a cost. Somewhere between all the laundry, the meals, the tears, and the laughter, I lost myself. I forgot what I liked to do. What made me happy outside of being a mother and a wife? My identity became so wrapped up in my family that when they all grew up, I felt like I had nothing left. I was always there for them. Every soccer game, every school recital, every family event. I never missed a moment. And when my children got older, when they went off to college, and started their own lives, I was still there. I thought, as a mother, I was supposed to be. When my son married, I welcomed his wife into our home with open arms. I did everything I could to make her feel comfortable, to help her adjust to this new life with my son. I thought she was the daughter I never had. But over time, things began to change. The little moments that once felt natural, like having a cup of tea together or laughing about old family stories, began to feel forced. I tried not to notice the tension at first. I told myself it was just the growing pains of any new family dynamic. But then the hints came, subtle at first. She'd make little comments about how I did things around the house, how I parented my children, even how I spoke to my husband. At first, I brushed it off. After all, she was new to this family, and maybe she was just finding her place. But then the words started to get sharper. She'd say things like, "Well, you wouldn't understand. You didn't have to balance everything the way we do now." Or, "You're just here because you have nowhere else to go, right?" Each comment felt like a small cut, but I told myself I was being sensitive. I was the mother, the older one. I should know better than to let these things affect me. But as the years went by, I couldn't ignore it anymore. Something had shifted. My role in the family, my importance, seemed to have faded. One evening, everything changed. It was just a small argument, one of those things that seem insignificant at the time. But in hindsight, you realize it was the breaking point. My son and daughter-in-law were at our house for dinner, and we were all sitting around the table, talking about the kids and their school projects. My daughter-in-law started talking about how hard it was to balance everything. Working full-time, raising 2 young children, managing the house. She glanced at me and said, "You wouldn't understand, would you? You didn't have to do it all when you were raising your kids." It wasn't the first time she had said something like that, but this time, it stung. It felt like she was dismissing everything I had done. All the years I had spent running myself ragged for my children and my family. I tried to smile and shrug it off, but the words stayed with me, gnawing at my insides. Later that night, as I was cleaning up the dishes, my son came into the kitchen. He was quiet, his face serious. I knew something was off, but I didn't expect what he said next. "Mom, you have to stop making things so hard for her. She's been telling me that you're always criticizing her, always making her feel like she's not enough." I was stunned. I hadn't been criticizing her. I had tried to be supportive, to give her advice when she asked for it. I had always done my best to keep the peace, but it was clear now that whatever I had been doing, it wasn't working. "I don't know what you're talking about," I said quietly, but the hurt was there in my voice. "I've always just wanted to help," he sighed, looking down at the floor. "I know, Mom, but sometimes it feels like you're not respecting her boundaries. She feels like you're intruding." That was when the realization hit me. For all the years I had spent giving, loving, and trying to make everyone happy, I had never once stopped to think about what anyone else needed, what my daughter-in-law needed. It was always about what I thought was right, about how I saw things. I hadn't been listening to her. I had been too focused on my own role, my own sacrifices, to realize that I was slowly pushing her away. The conversation didn't end well. My son's words lingered in the air like a weight, and I could see the frustration in his eyes. He was caught between his loyalty to me and his loyalty to his wife. I felt a pang of guilt, but I didn't know what to do with it. A few days later, it happened. She told me to leave. I had been staying with them for a few weeks after a minor surgery. I had planned to go back to my own home, but that morning, my daughter-in-law came to me with a look in her eyes that I had never seen before. Cold, distant, almost like a stranger. "We've talked about it," she said, her voice flat. "It's time for you to leave. You're not welcome here anymore." I remember how the words hit me like a slap. I stood there, in the middle of their living room, feeling like the floor had been swept out from under me. The silence that followed was deafening. My heart was beating in my ears, but I couldn't speak. I didn't argue. I didn't fight. I just nodded, turned around, and began gathering my things. But inside, I was breaking. It was as if all the years of love, all the sacrifices, had been for nothing. I thought I had done everything right, but somehow it wasn't enough. As I packed my bags, I couldn't help but smile. It wasn't because I was happy, but because I realized something. I had spent so much of my life trying to please everyone, trying to be the perfect mother, the perfect wife, but I had forgotten to take care of myself. And now, I was paying the price. The days after I left were the hardest I've ever faced. I stayed with a friend for a while, and then moved into a small apartment. It wasn't much, but it was mine. At first I was numb. The silence of my new home was overwhelming. I had never lived alone before. I had always been surrounded by my family, by the noise and chaos of children, of love, of life. Now, there was nothing. I thought about my daughter-in-law's words constantly. You didn't ask for this. You're just here because you have nowhere else to go. Those words echoed in my mind, haunting me, but I tried not to dwell on them. Instead, I focused on rebuilding my life. It was during this time that I began to realize just how much I had neglected myself. I had always been so focused on others, on being there for my children, on keeping the peace, on making everyone else happy, that I had forgotten to be happy myself. I had forgotten what it meant to do things for me, to enjoy life on my own terms. I started to take small steps. I signed up for a painting class, something I had always wanted to do but never had the time for. I began walking every morning, feeling the fresh air on my face, something I had never appreciated before. I even reached out to old friends, people I had lost touch with over the years. I began to build a life for myself, outside of my family. It wasn't easy, and there were many moments of doubt, but each day I felt a little stronger. Then one day my son called. I've been thinking about what happened, Mom, he said, his voice soft. I'm sorry for how things turned out. I know it wasn't easy for you. I'm not angry, honey, I said, my voice steady. I just want you to be happy, and I want you to understand that I've given everything to this family. But sometimes I have to take care of me too. There was silence on the other end of the phone. I could hear him breathing, and then he spoke again. I know, Mom. I see that now. I didn't realize what you had sacrificed. That was the moment I knew things could be okay. There was no magic fix, no perfect resolution. But in that moment, we both understood something. That love isn't always about sacrifice. Sometimes, it's about knowing when to let go, when to step back, and when to take care of yourself. The weeks went by slowly but steadily. My son and I kept in touch, and little by little, things began to heal. My daughter-in-law still kept her distance, and I didn't push. I understood now that she needed space, just as I had. One afternoon, she called me. It was a short call, but it meant the world to me. I've been thinking, she said. Maybe we could start over, try again. I'm sorry for the way I treated you. And just like that, a small door opened. It wasn't perfect, but it was a start. The family didn't go back to what it once was, but it grew in new ways. I found my place again, not as the perfect mother or wife, but as myself. And my family learned that sometimes love means giving each other room to breathe, room to grow. I've learned that sacrifice isn't always the answer. Love doesn't mean losing yourself. It means finding the balance. We give, but we also need to take. And it's okay to do things for yourself, to take care of your own heart. I'm not angry anymore. I'm not bitter. I've let go of the things I thought I needed to prove, the things I thought I had to give. I'm learning to love myself. And in doing so, I've found a new kind of love for my family. Sometimes, the hardest part of life is realizing that you don't have to give everything up to be loved. You just have to be yourself. And maybe, just maybe, that's enough.